The United States of America prides itself on being a model of justice for both its citizens and the rest of the world. However, numerous pieces of evidence prove that it is flawed and biased. Today's case is about George Stinney, a 14-year-old boy who was sentenced to death by electric chair simply because he was black. In 1944, in Alcolu, South Carolina, the Stinney family lived in a racially divided area. The region was split into two halves, one for white people and one for black people, separated by a railroad track. Betty June Binnicker, 11, and Mary Emma Thames, 7, both white girls, went out riding their bicycles. They were looking for a certain type of flower and encountered George Stinney and his younger sister. The girls asked them about the flower, but George and his sister said they didn't know, and then went their separate ways. 2 days later, the parents of the girls reported them missing. After a search, the investigators found the bodies of the girls in a ditch. The cause of death was blunt force trauma. The police turned their attention to the Stinney family because an eyewitness claimed to have seen George and his sister talking to the girls. When the police arrived at the Stinney home, they took George for questioning and immediately arrested him, despite his claims of innocence. He was taken to jail and denied access to his parents and counsel. George was interrogated in a room full of 1,500 white men and was coerced into confessing. The investigator wrote that the murder weapon was a 15-inch railroad spike, yet he refused to disclose where it was found. George was then quickly taken to court. The trial lasted only 10 minutes. George's lawyer failed to present any evidence in his favor. George Stinney was sentenced to death by electric chair based solely on his coerced confession with no physical evidence or eyewitnesses. Indeed, just 2 months later, George was strapped to an electric chair designed for adults. The officers struggled to secure his small, frail body to the immense chair. Decades after George's execution, with the case closed and most of the investigators, witnesses, judge, and even most of George Stinney's family deceased, attorneys Steve McKenzie and Matt Burgess revisited the case in 2004. They were struck by the rapid progression of events and the swift execution of a teenager after a 10-minute trial. It was as if he was framed. In 2014, 70 years after George's execution, the judge ruled that his trial was unjust and that George was innocent. The actual murderer was a 26-year-old white man from a wealthy family who had killed the girls by hitting them on the head with a railroad spike more than 7 times, something impossible for a frail teenager like George to have done. The injustice and bias that prevailed in America and still exist today have cost many lives unjustly. George Stinney was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, and because of the color of his skin, his life was taken without just cause.